Going forward, I want to use this channel to acknowledge the 20th anniversary of several different album releases. Because of time constraints, I am undoubtedly going to miss some very important stuff. But to start out, I'll hit on the stuff that really resonated with me personally. First up on our journey, we're going to go back to February of 2001 and take a look back at End Is Forever by the Ataris. Now, there's some conflicting information online about the actual release of this album, the date that is, but we're just going to say for the sake of argument, it definitely was February 2001, and even my release date on this was a little behind, so all kinds of stuff is off here.
Oh my hearing biscuits! I'm late!
Right off the bat, I have to say, this remains a highly underrated album. Perhaps what makes End Is Forever such a timeless release is, well, just that. It deals with the passage of time in a very special manner. And when you look back at their entire catalog, you'll find that the Ataris didn't just project the contemporary moment of youth culture, but they were able to interpret the present as a passing moment. They truly are the masters of nostalgia. Real quick though, let's just figure out who the Ataris actually are. The band themselves, they've gone through several lineup changes over the years, but the one constant has been frontman and guitarist Kris Roe. For all intents and purposes, the Ataris are the diary of Kris Roe. That one might be a little on the nose.
Here in this diary, I write you visions of my summer.
Sorry. Anyway, they formed in Anderson, Indiana in 1996 before relocating to Santa Barbara, California. In between those two events, the band was signed to Joe Escalante's Kung Fu Records. While on Kung Fu, they released their first 3 full-length studio albums, End Is Forever being the final release on Kung Fu. And then in 2003, they would make their major label debut with So Long Astoria. Stick around 2 years and I'll be reviewing that in 2023. So Long Astoria was likely their career peak, especially from a commercial perspective. They didn't become the pop stars that Blink-182 or Good Charlotte did, but they were visible enough that if one of your normie friends hears Boys of Summer, they might be familiar with what they're hearing. Or they might have just listened to the older version.
I can see you, your brown skin shining in the sun. You got your hair combed back and your sunglasses on.
In the following years, they've actually only released 1 studio album, but they've remained an active touring band. And during the pandemic, Kris Roe has been known to hop on Facebook and Instagram Live and play full albums in their entirety. Go check it out, it's pretty good stuff. So that's a short history of the Ataris, but what are they? Offhand, most people familiar with the band would label them as a pop-punk act, and that's probably correct. But that lacks a little bit of nuance. The Ataris really don't sound like the titans of the late 90s and early 2000s pop-punk. Like most self-respecting pop-punk bands, they cite the Descendants as a major influence, but their musical influences seem to be pretty diverse. The Ataris take a lot from lesser-known bands like Jawbreaker, but I can't help but think they also have a hint of 90s rock influence. Compare that to bands like Blink-182 and Good Charlotte that seem to be clearly influenced by the boy band boom that was happening at the same time. But it's okay, the pop-punk tent is big enough for everyone. I wanted to make that very long-winded point just to illustrate where End Is Forever is actually situated. When the Ataris signed to Columbia, there was thankfully not a major uproar. But So Long Astoria does sound drastically different than their debut album. At the same time though, it doesn't sound that much different from End Is Forever. End Is Forever has its pop-punky moments, but it's not exactly a perfect illustration of what the genre sounded like at its peak. Given that it was an independent release, End Is Forever does not seem to have been widely reviewed, and I don't have the issue of alternative press that it was likely reviewed in. But if you've got that issue, go ahead and send it my way. Looking over some of the stuff that I did see though, the reviews seem to be generally favorable, about 4 out of 5 range. And personally, I'd give it a 5 out of 5, but I agree with the sentiment of a lot of the reviews that I saw. So check this one out. The album is a tasty buffet of melancholy pop punk. That is a perfect review of this album. Guess I could go now.
Bye, bye, bye.
Never mind, let's talk about some of the songs. The subject matter oscillates between songs about lost love and songs about lost youth. They're basically the same thing. That's why I have this thesis. More to this point, a lot of the love songs seem to have the vibe that it's just too late. Where their past songs like San Dimas might have been a fantasy of what could be, a lot of these other songs are about what could have been. I mean, the first song is titled Giving Up on Love. Also, how funny is this that in the canon of the song, the guy loses his girl to Billy Idol? That's amazing.
What you doing, sir? Chicken or fish?
You better get out of my way, Billy. You're gonna get hurt.
Oh, yeah?
Don't you talk to Billy Idol that way.
Funny enough, the album references Billy Idol, then moves on to Frank Sinatra. Summer Wind Was Always Our Song is the one track on here that does have a video attached to it, so maybe you could say this is the biggest song from the album, but I wouldn't. The intro is great. Check out these lyrics.
These breakup songs make sense again, and I really wish they didn't.
From there, we take a break from the sadness and completely flip the switch with IOU on Galaxy. But don't worry, Bad Case of Broken Heart brings back the melancholy. Again, I love the meta commentary of how music plays a role in the relationship cycle and how it is referenced over and over again in this album. Okay, so the first few songs were primarily concerned with relationships, but now the nostalgia really gets cranked up. The cultural references are laid on a little thick here. I mean, they've got all your favorites. The Karate Kid, Galaga, Ice Cube. In all seriousness though, the message here, it's great. We spend our youth in such a hurry to grow up, but why? Being immature is one thing, but there's no harm in smelling the roses. And always remember, everything is okay.
Everything is okay, and everything is okay, and everything is okay.
The Ataris are not the first or the last band to sing about a long-distance relationship. It's a pretty standard subject matter. They just do it better. And I think this was actually very personal to the band. If you read up on Kris Roe's life story, he had a young daughter and he left Indiana to go to California to pursue his dreams of making it in the music industry. So not only did he have the touring separation that every musician naturally has, he had an additional separation from a very young family that I think is pretty unique. He's not the only one, but definitely something you didn't always get the flavor of in pop punk. At that point, we moved back onto the nostalgia trope. The eternal summer songwriting trope is something that'll never go out of style. Kind of like the distance relationships. And I know it's in fashion to dunk on Catcher in the Rye, but this is A+ use of Mr. Holden Caulfield. Fast Times at Dropout High is the heart and soul of this album. This song has deep, specific meanings, but it's also not so specific that the average person can't relate. To me, this song is the counter to anybody that says pop punk is just music for little kids. Yes, the song specifically speaks to a young listener, but you can be a jaded adult and this one can still resonate. And after that emotional high, the listener needs to lighten up.
Lighten up, Francis.
And Song for a Mixtape is the perfect song. Let's face it, this song was written to be put onto mixtapes. If Vitamin C's Graduation was written to be a graduation song, and I've talked about that a little too much on this channel, then this song was meant to be put on mixtapes. I mean, it's called A Song for a Mixtape. And just a heads up, if I had a romantic interest in you 15, 16 years ago, you may have got a mixtape and this song was definitely the first song on it. Just know, you're not alone. A few other people had that same song as the first song on the mixtape that I gave it to. I hope you're living healthy and happy lives right now. Please don't get your feelings hurt on that one. That was a weird digression. Okay. And then You Need a Hug keeps the humor going. The dig at Henry Rollins is next level. I mean, it'd be awesome if Henry Rollins was your dad.
I don't read that Maximum Rock and Roll. I don't read that Flip Side. I don't watch that TV set.
You ever get the feeling that LA's dead?
Not deader than any other place.
That's
Not
true.
deader than some people's minds. Okay, boy, wrap it up. I'm cold, I'm wet, and I'm busy selling out, so I gotta get backstage to my women and my cocaine. So what else do you want to know?
How I Spent My Summer Vacation brings back the optimism of IOU on Galaxy, but it mixes in some of the sentimentality we heard earlier on this release. When we get to Teenage Riot, the listener is emotionally spent, so you need like a nice punk rock song to blow off some steam. This is a left turn, but it fits well enough. When you hear the Ataris in this gear, you realize if they wanted to, they could have seamlessly spent their entire career as a much heavier band. They pull it off nicely. The creatively named song number 13 serves as kind of a theoretical conclusion to this album. It keeps some of the energy of the more lighthearted Teenage Riot, but it brings in some of the emotion that the earlier songs had. And the album officially ends with Hello and Goodbye. No, I'm not including Ben Lee. I don't even know if that was on this one. Maybe. Hello and Goodbye is a perfect final chapter to this thing. It's more of the epilogue if Song 13 was the conclusion. It's just Kris and his acoustic, blending the elements of nostalgia and a shaky relationship in a perfect little cocktail to finish off this thing.
Hello and goodbye, in the silence between saying I love you. And sometimes I wonder about that too.
And that was End Is Forever, a great album that can sometimes get lost in the catalog of the Ataris. All of their work has so much heart, it's difficult to rank their albums, but I highly recommend giving End Is Forever an isolated listen. You won't be disappointed. What do you think of End Is Forever? What are your favorite songs from the album? Drop a review down in the comment section, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Talk to you next time.